Hey, it's Elizabeth D'Alto, and this is the Untamed the Wild Soul podcast. From body image, sex, spirituality, money and relationships, to motherhood, creativity, business, communication, and desire, Untamed the Wild Soul is the place to come for real stories and powerful advice to help you reclaim and redefine womanhood in the 21st century. What's up, wild ones? Welcome to episode number 179 of the Untamed the Wild Soul podcast. I am your host, Elizabeth D'Alto, and today's episode is all about vaginal steaming. And I know some of you might be wondering, what is that? I barely knew anything about it myself before I interviewed today's guest, Keli Garza, and she lays it all out. So it's not just about vaginal steaming, it's about vaginal health. And I was just mind blown, y'all. I learned so many things I didn't know and confirmed a lot of things I actually had hunches about. So check it out. Keli is the founder and owner of Steamy Chick, and she's been researching the practice of vaginal steaming and using it in her own self-care since 2011, which, by the way, she tells the story during this episode of how that all came to be, and it's just freaking hilarious. So she began selling vaginal steam kits in 2013 after she'd been using the practice for a while, getting amazing results, and suggested a friend try it for her menstrual complications. And the friend actually offered to pay Keli to make her one. And the next week, 3 more women contacted her asking her to buy these steam chairs that she was making. So since then, she's worked with over 600 women to use vaginal steam treatments to address gynecological complaints. So using her research background, she's documented hundreds of case studies and holding the only known research database on vaginal steaming. So all of that to say, this woman knows her stuff. I loved doing this interview. She's brilliant, she's hilarious, she's passionate. And again, the conversation, it focuses around vaginal health, specifically the health benefits, practice, and history of vaginal steaming. I was so impressed with Keli's knowledge, research, and experience on the topic. Like I said, that origin story, it might have been my favorite part, but I feel like every part was my favorite part. We did this interview. Keli was in a park. Her daughter Lotus was in the background. It was so freaking fun and illuminating. This is just so amazing. The more we can know about our bodies, about our systems, about being a woman, not just, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, energetically, which we talk about all the time, but physically, like what's going on in our bodies and how do we understand ourselves? It's just so good. I hope you love this one. Come on into the Facebook group. Let me know what you think. A couple things we cover in here is how the moon is ours. What actually are cramps? It's contracting, which means something is stuck. So if you're a person who during your menstruation experiences cramps, there's some good information for you here. Keli also gets into what the perfect period is. And I'm not one for labeling things perfect or having to strive for perfection, but scientifically, what she calls the perfect period, it makes a lot of sense. That's not to shame anyone who isn't having this experience right now. I actually, as I'm recording this, am just finishing my cycle and realizing after having this conversation with Keli, some complications, some things that's going on with my cycle that I'd like to address. And I have one of Keli's steam chairs. So super, super, super looking forward to making that a regular practice to help. And I'll report back. We'll have Keli back on and we'll talk more about it. And as I try out and implement this practice into my own life, I'll be able to report in on the benefits. So, oh my God, enjoy this so, so much. Let's just get into it. I'll stop raving. Enjoy the show. Welcome, women. I'm pumped for today's interview. It is on, I am showing up in total, beginner mind. I have no idea what the hell I'm going to learn on this interview today. And I can't wait to dive in with our guest, Keli Garza. So Keli, before we get into all the amazing stuff that you do at Steamy Chick, we have a guest. Hi, friend. For people watching, you can see an adorable child in the background. For people listening, there is an adorable child in the background. I love this. It's real life. We have Patricia Moreno, who was on a couple months ago at the end of her interview. Her kids burst in. They just got home from school. I was like, yes, we don't edit that stuff out either because this is called Untamed Yourself. So anyway, what do you love about being a woman?
Hi. I actually was just listening to your last interview about this, and I had to agree. I really love the cycling.
Yeah.
I'm somebody who pays close attention to my cycle as well. So I guess just in the end, I can't believe that the moon is ours. The moon is ours. We're connected to the moon. Our cycle follows it. That's a connection. Nobody can explain it. Science can't explain it, but it's our moon. It's women's moon, you know, and I just love that. I love following it.
That's amazing. So it makes sense to me that you would be connected to your menstrual cycle and connected to the moon due to the nature of what you do. So how did you get into being the woman who makes the vagina steamers?
Oh my gosh. It was, I was kind of like pushed into it, like forced into it. And what happened was I learned about it, I think in 2011. I was at a workshop from a spiritual womb healer named Marcia Lopez. And I was actually there because I was meeting my friend there. We had a friend in common. It was like a little women's gathering. And me and my friend were supposed to go to the club. So she's like, meet me at this women's gathering, and then, you know, we'll go to the club afterwards. So I was like, okay. So, like, I come in, like, late in the back, you know, that wasn't even where I was going. You know, I was, you know, all ready for the club. So then, so I went in, and they were, you know, doing stuff like breathing and meditating. And then she was like, I remember her mentioning, and you can also do vaginal steaming. And she did like a little explanation of it. And I was like, okay, this is where it goes too far. And this is why I don't come to these gatherings. So I was like, why would anybody do that? Okay. So fast forward, the next year, my period was missing. And I remember waking up one morning. Okay, I had a problem with my period missing, not because I missed my period. I was like, sayonara, who cares? But I was having a lot of PMS. And I mean PMS like I was having, and like I'm saying this as joking, but it was real. Like I kept on thinking about murdering somebody. Mm-hmm. So I was like, whoa, trying to talk myself down every day. And I just realized, I was like, you know what? I was like, I think my hormones are out of balance. And I was like, maybe if my period came back, maybe my hormones could balance out. So I went to bed with that thought, and I said, yeah, okay. So I should make my period come back. And then I was like, okay, so how should I do that? And I woke up and I remembered all of a sudden vaginal steaming. I was like, I need to do that. So I found a Korean spa, and I went to a Korean spa and I did a vaginal steam. And I you know, it was okay. It wasn't private enough for me. Like people were talking to me as I was doing it and like asking me questions. And I wasn't really into that. I'm a very private person, and it was just like very outside of my comfort zone. So anyways, I drive home and I go to sleep, and I woke up with my period. So I was like, oh, hey, that worked. And in the meantime, when I was at the Korean spa, what I learned from the spa owner was that Korean women steam every month after their period is over. So my period came, and what I noticed was my period looked better than ever. That meaning usually it's like kind of like dark and stringy and kind of brown, and it was a fresh red color, and it felt really good. And not only that, my PMS was gone. I was all of a sudden the peaceful person that I believe I always am, you know.
Yeah.
It's just back to that girl.
No one's life was in danger anymore.
yeah, everybody was safe all of a sudden. So anyway, so then my period came, and I felt it actually, I remember that it smelled very fresh and very clean. And so I was like, the only downside of this is like, now I have my period, and so I don't have that, you know, that fresh steaming feeling. And I was like, I guess I'm just going to do it after my period, like the Korean women. I was like, that makes sense to me. It's like a preventative type of practice. So when my period was over, I was like, okay, there's no way I'm going back to the sauna to do this. So I made my own like little like steam setup at home. I took a chair, I like made a hole in it, you know, like I dug a hole in the ground, I built a little fire. I figured out a way how to do it myself. And so I did it for like probably like 4 years, and I never told anybody. I didn't tell my sister, my mom, and auntie. I didn't tell anybody. I just did it after my period. And that's how secretive and private of a person I am about those types of things. But it really improved my period, and I really looked forward to it every month. Like when my period would come, I knew that I would do that, when my period was finished, and it would be like a nice, like I would feel nice and clean and fresh afterwards. So I had a baby, and when I had my baby, I learned that you could do steaming after giving birth to help recover. So I did that, and when I made another steam chair. I had it set up in the corner of my room, and one of my friends saw it, and she was like, "What is that witch chair in the corner?"
Was this the same friend who took you to the thing, or a different friend?
No, this is a different friend. So then I told her about it, and she started to tell all of my friends. And one of the things was I lost all of my weight after having Lotus. This is Lotus.
Hi, Lotus.
I lost all of my weight within 30 days. And my friend was like, "How much of it do you think has to do with that chair?" And I was like, "I think a lot of it has to do with it." So she started to tell everybody who got pregnant, "Oh, you got to ask Keli about the witch chair. Ask Keli about the witch chair."
I love that she called it the witch chair.
Yeah. So basically the cat was out of the bag. The puss was out of the bag. And so within that year, somebody, came to me who had really bad periods. And I said, "I think vaginal steaming could help." And I started to tell her how to make a chair. And she said, "Look, I will give you $100. Just make it for me." And so I did. And she was a birth educator and a doula. So, somebody who, has access to a lot of women. Well, because she had such success with it, she had really heavy periods and really bad clots and cramps. And she steamed before her period, and then she didn't have any of those issues. Like the period reduced I think it was like 9 days long. Her period ended up being 4 days long, medium flow, and the clots were all able to clear out. And she didn't have any pain. So it was a really remarkable change. And so she started to tell her customers, her clients, her friends, and all the doulas started to call me. And so I started making them for people. And it was just something I did out of my home, like make vaginal steam saunas on the side when I had my little baby.
Oh my God. This is so great. And so, I bought one because Kimberly, our friend, Kimberly Ann Johnson, who introduced us, her interview actually goes up 2 weeks before yours. So a lot of people listening have probably heard Kimberly's interview. They're probably not surprised that Kimberly is the one who connected me to you. And so I still haven't done it. Like, I went on faith, on Kimberly's word. I ordered my own steam chair. It's sitting in my closet. I had every intention of doing it before we talked. I feel like someone who didn't do their freaking homework before the test. So I'm still super excited, but I'll share, I've always had like pretty regular normal periods. I do get cramps though. And actually my last period, there was so much going on. I was traveling. I had been in like my 4th city in 4 weeks, and I got like a migraine, which that's not usually part of my cramp regimen. I just get a little crampy in my belly. And, oh my God, I got nauseous. I threw up. Like, I had a fever. And so I don't know if it just was because of my period, but it was like on day 1. So it felt correlated, perhaps exacerbated. And I was like, I got to try that steam chair. So I still haven't tried it. And I'm so curious. And, maybe there's a reason why I had to have the conversation with you first. I don't know. But okay, so we got to backtrack a little bit. So for people who are watching or listening, I just want you to describe the setup, because like when you're talking about like sitting in this chair with a hole in it, or being at the sauna and it not being private, I'm just imagining my women just assuming that you're like naked and like your legs are spread and that like everyone can see your vagina and you're just sitting there chilling. And I know that's not the case.
Yeah. Okay. So there's like basically a seat, and it looks like a little trunk. If you imagine a little trunk the size of a chair, it's a little trunk, and in the top there's a hole. And so you sit on this little trunk, and you can't even tell that there's a hole there once you're seated on it. Okay. So that's how it looks, number one. And then I sell them for private home use. So you're doing it in your bathroom where nobody can talk to you and ask you questions while you're doing it. So then inside of the box, there's an herb pot filled with water and herbs, and it is steaming. You put it. Sorry, there's a truck. Okay, you put it on the stovetop or on a burner, and you get the herbs boiling. And then once it's steaming, then you would put it in the pot. Now, it's low enough that when the steam reaches you, it is not too hot. It doesn't burn out. It just feels like nice and soothing. And so even though I didn't enjoy my first experience so much, I really enjoy it now. And I I did probably the second, third time I did it. But it's just like, imagine you've never had a hot bath and then you have a hot bath. Yeah. It's like the most relaxing thing ever. You feel entirely different afterwards. Like your day completely changes. Like once you get into a hot bath and then you get out, like you just have a sense of calm. You feel so fresh. You feel so clean. That's the feeling of doing a vaginal steam. It's just warm. It's cozy. You feel different afterwards. You feel just calm and clean. And usually I recommend doing it right before bed because if you go to sleep afterwards, you sleep really hard. It's kind of like, cool. After a massage, you don't really want to then go back to your busy day. You want to just relax and go to sleep. Yeah. So that's how it is. Like there's no pain to it. Yeah. And that's one of the beautiful things about it because what I've done is I've done some research. I'm a researcher. I have a master's degree in international development, and I'm just like a research nerd. So once I started doing it, I was like, where does this come from? Yeah. So I learned about it from a Guatemalan healer. And then I went to a Korean spa. So I'm like, well, what is it? Guatemala or Korea? And then so I was researching, and then I found that it is like really commonplace in Ghana. It's commonplace in Haiti. It was traditionally practiced in Hawaii. It's practiced in Papua New Guinea in the South Pacific Islands. It's something that women do in Turkey. They do it in Suriname in South America. And it seems like every day, I find a new place where women traditionally have done this practice. So traditionally, it was something that midwives used to do for women postpartum, or if any issues would arise. This was traditionally what women used to treat like cramps, or to treat infertility, to treat any, infections, or, bacterial vaginosis, or even urinary tract infections. Recently, I discovered it in Western Europe. I was waiting to find a Western Europe reference to it. In Sweden, they use certain herbs and do it for UTIs. And then also in Germany, they use it. The midwives use it for postpartum use. So, like right now, I can't find a region of the world where traditionally this wasn't practiced, but it's not common knowledge in the West, and it's been making a comeback because I think lately because of how I think when we go to the gynecologist, a lot of times we get pills that stop our period, or we get painkillers, or they suggest surgery. So almost all of the issues that women have, those are going to be the main options. And vaginal steaming can treat a lot of issues without ever needing to take, any drugs or needing to cut the body. And so it's basically becoming kind of like a first level of, let me try this and see if it helps. Yeah. Then if that works, let's go to a deeper level. Let's go ahead and consider, doing an operation on the next level. Because when you do it at the first level, there's no harm to it. It's just something you do in the privacy of your own home. It's a relaxing treatment. You go to sleep. You have beautiful dreams afterwards. You sleep deeply, and you wake up refreshed. What harm is there in that? And, it's one of the beautiful things about the way that women do treat the body is it's very gentle.
Yeah. Oh, I love it so much. I really can't. I'm totally incentivized now. So is it best? I have all these technical questions now. I don't usually have technical questions, but I'm so curious. Okay. So I'm a big geek too. So we're just going to nerd out big time.
Okay.
And I know this is on your website, but I also know people's proclivity to not read instructions this day and age and to like skip things. So it's really important to me that we cover the contraindications. When do women not want to do this? So not during menstruation, correct?
Correct. So you never want to steam during fresh red blood. Okay. So if you're menstruating, then steaming might actually, what it does is it brings heat and circulation to the area, and you don't want to bring more circulation when you're bleeding. Right. And more heat, because then you might bleed more heavily. Right. So it's contraindicated during menstruation. It's also contraindicated during pregnancy. Steaming is the equivalent of a medical DNC procedure. Okay. So a DNC is when they actually want to clean the uterus for either a medical reason or something else. So when you steam, what it does is the steam is able to, I believe it actually opens the cervix and gets into the uterus, and it gets the blood flowing. And so it helps the uterus clean itself out. So when you're pregnant, you wouldn't want to steam because you don't want the cervix to open. The cervix isn't supposed to open until labor.
Right.
So absolutely no steaming during pregnancy. And then I think for an IUD, for the copper IUD, it's safe, but for the plastic IUD, I don't usually recommend it, but it can be done, if you have guidance from somebody like me or one of my practitioners. And then let's see, what else? If people are prone to heavy spontaneous bleeding, there are some women, they have something that they usually describe as like flooding. Like they're just walking along and their period's not due or anything. And then all of a sudden they just start to bleed. So spontaneous bleeding, really needs to be cautious with steaming, because steaming, again, it gets the blood flowing.
Right.
And you don't want anybody who's prone to spontaneous heavy bleeding to actually, get their period started with it, or to get spontaneous bleeding started. So those are some of the contraindications.
Got it. And then how often? So you mentioned after your period is probably like the ideal window. Do people do it more than once between their cycles or no?
Yeah. Some women do. Okay, so ideally, women steam once a month at the end of their cycle, and that's just standard. And you should do it for 10 minutes, just a mild steam after the period. If women don't have any problems with their period, that's how they would use it. Now, you mentioned you had mild cramps.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you have cramps, then that's where you would say, okay, so let's use steaming to address those cramps. Cramps is a sign that something is that, okay, so during the period, the uterus sheds everything in the period and cleans it out. So it's a cleanse. The period is a cleanse. When there's cramping, that's a sign that that something is actually stuck in there that the uterus is trying to clean out. So then it starts to contract. That's what the uterus does. That's what the uterus does if there's a baby in there. It's the same thing. The uterus contracts to push things out. So cramping is actually contracting because something is stuck, usually along the walls. And another sign that something is stuck in there is usually going to be brown blood. Usually when women have cramping, there's either brown blood or clots, which is, again, that stuff has a hard time flowing out easily, and that's where the cramping comes. So when that happens, then I would recommend steaming before the period. So you would steam like on menstrual cycle day 25 for the period. And then when the period comes, what it does, that steaming helps to loosen everything up, and then that stuff, whatever's stuck, can flow out. And that's where you get to that fresh red blood.
Got it. So then you wouldn't do it again after?
Yeah, you would do it after. You always do it after.
Always do it after, sometimes before also. Got it.
Yeah, sometimes before also. And then if there's infertility issues, or if there's fibroids, cysts, or infections, then there's actually a different way that it's used as well. So one of the things that differentiates me from the rest of the women that do vaginal steaming is that I started to, like, when I started making vaginal steam saunas for women, I would kind of do an intake and figure out what their period was like. And I had learned how to read periods through using traditional Chinese medicine books. Yeah. And they read the periods. They'll read the color of the blood and what different signs mean. So I would read women's periods. In addition, I would work with an acupuncturist, so she would do a diagnosis as well. Cool. So I would do an intake, and then I would kind of develop like, oh, okay, if you got this problem, let's try this, or okay. And then when I would get another woman with that problem, I'd be like, well, this worked. Why don't you do that again? And so over time, I've worked with probably over 600 women the last time I counted, and I've learned like very specific protocols for addressing different things.
That is cool.
So, for example, for women who have chronic infections, I recommend doing a 10-day cleanse. So this isn't even period related. It's just like, boom, you steam back to back. And what it does is it helps to clear out all of the excess cervical mucus. Women who have infections always have excess cervical mucus, which is like, it's either like thick, white, it's smelly, it's yellow, it's green, it's red, So what I have the women do is steam every day, and actually that stuff comes out. And once the stuff comes out, the only thing that's left is pleasant smelling, clear, fragrant nectar vaginal type mucus. So that stuff doesn't hold infections in it. It doesn't hold yeast. It doesn't hold bacteria. It's kind of like it's the same as mucus in your nose. If you've got mucus in your nose, it's got germs in it. It's the same with our cervical mucus. So these women, they end up with these infections over and over again. I just want to clear all that cervical mucus out. Like, let's get it out, do a 10-day cleanse, and then often their infections will stop occurring. So, so there's different protocols based on what's going on. And so that's one of the things that's unique about my company is that I developed these protocols, and now I also train practitioners on how to use these different protocols, do an intake, read the period, and then figure out a customized treatment plan. So I call this, I created a new field, Elizabeth.
What do you call it?
Peristeam Hydrotherapy. Ooh. So this is called peristeam hydrotherapy. It's a little bit more than just doing a vaginal steam. It's using vaginal steam therapy to treat, specific menstrual cycle issues.
I love this so much. It's just so freaking cool. And it's just another excuse to go, damn, female bodies are amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, they are. And the weird thing is they're really responsive to steam. Like, steam is amazing too. Okay, so I geek out on the female body, but also steam. Steam is made from fire, water, and then you throw some herbs in there. So you could say that's the earth element. It's just like 3 elements, but when you combine them in the right way, like steam can work its way through granite rock. You think it can't get into the uterus when there's an actual hole? You know what I mean? Like, because people are like, no, steam isn't getting in there. I'm like, do you know what steam can do? Steam can power a train to go across the whole entire country. You think steam can't create a little bit of circulation to get the blood flowing better from the liver to the feet? You know what I mean? Like, it can, So steam is also pretty incredible. I geek out on it. Like, I look at pictures of geysers, like, oh my gosh.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I'm really into steam. But yeah, it just turns out to be like really gentle and really effective. And what I tell women is, like, give it a try for 3 months. If you go through 3 cycles, you can almost always change your period and get it to, this is the next concept you're kind of like, I think. I have something I call the perfect period. So what I noticed after I steamed was my period got kind of perfect. It was 4 days long, medium flow, red blood, no symptoms, no anything, no PMS, nothing. So then when I started selling these, and several of the women all of a sudden started describing their period like in the same way, I was like, oh my gosh, steaming gets women to these periods. And then it took a while, but I finally made the conclusion. I was like, that's the perfect period. We've been taught that any period is okay. It's like a very individual thing, like your star sign or something. It's not. Like, your period is supposed to look one way. It's kind of the same as the moon. The moon, it's not like the moon, it doesn't change. Like, it's the same. You're going to go from the new moon to the full moon, back to the new moon, and that's how it works. And the lunar month is the same for all of us. So why is our menstrual cycle different? We're tied to the moon. We're tied to the lunar cycle. So the other interesting thing that happens is that when women get to this perfect period, they're also in tune with the moon. Usually they'll be bleeding either at the new moon or at the full moon. So what it does is it kind of standardizes like what a healthy period is. So I call it the standard healthy cycle. Cool. So with peristeam hydrotherapy, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get everybody's period to the standard healthy cycle. And I haven't worked with very many women that I haven't been able to get this standard healthy cycle for them.
That is amazing. I'm so this is so freaking fun. So I'm really curious then, other just like miscellaneous things. So say a woman has had a hysterectomy.
Yeah.
And so doesn't have a uterus anymore. How does steaming work there?
Yeah. So women who don't have, who have had hysterectomies, they can still get, infections.
Okay.
And so steaming can help with that. And then also more frequently, the main issue that they have is now dryness. They have like extreme vaginal dryness. Steaming just in one treatment treats vaginal dryness. Some women, I've had women, they say it's so painful that they can't even walk, and then it makes sex painful. It makes them bleed or tear during sex. So vaginal dryness can be, it can be an issue. And just you do one steam and the vaginal dryness is gone. It's
That's
moisturized.
Amazing. And what about for perimenopausal or menopausal women?
Okay, wait, let's go back to hysterectomy. Some
Yes.
women get hysterectomies. They only get the uterus taken out, and they still have the ovaries, the fallopian tubes and the ovaries.
Mm-hmm.
I've worked with a woman who ended up having ovarian cysts after they had already done the uterus removal. So she did vaginal steaming. She worked 3 months, and she was able to she had 2 softball-sized cysts on both sides. She was able to get those cysts to drain, and she went back to the doctor, and he was actually doing the pre-surgery visit, and he was like, "Oh my God, you don't have any cysts anymore." Wow. And she told him what he did, and he was like, "I don't know if that had anything to do with it." Of course it did, but but he's like, "I've never heard of it."
He'd rather chalk it up to a mystery than be like, "Oh yeah, that sounds like it could have been effective."
Yeah, totally. So she's still here.
Okay, good. I'm like, did you lose your child? Let's make sure that doesn't happen.
So it can be helpful, especially for women, like if they still have the ovaries and if they have any issues there. Okay, you said perimenopausal or menopausal?
Yeah, what about then?
Okay, so let's talk about postmenopause. Postmenopause, women can still use it because the same thing, women can get fibroids, they can get cysts, they can have vaginal dryness. And then also postmenopause, sometimes women have what they call phantom periods. They're like, my period comes every month, but I just don't bleed. I get cramps, I get PMS,
Interesting. I never heard of that before.
Yeah. So these postmenopause women, they still, some of them are still having phantom periods. So anyways, when they do the steaming, it gets rid of the any phantom period signs. And then it helps, again, with moisturization. And then the bonus, it helps with libido.
Oh, girl.
It shoots the libido through the roof for postmenopause women.
Cool.
So that's something, that's actually the biggest, like my postmenopause clients, that's the biggest thing that they come looking for. And they're very happy. And their husbands are very happy.
And then, so during menopause?
Okay, so menopause is interesting, like the way that it's, okay, so let's see. It can help with, so menopause is like, what happens during menopause is whatever's been going on with the period up until menopause, it's now magnified. So if there's issues with cramps, then during menopause, they might be way worse. If there are clots, then during menopause, they might be huge and painful. So like vaginal steaming can definitely help during menopause to alleviate a lot of the symptoms. The only thing that I want women to be cautious with when they're in menopause is that hot flashes are a sign of excess heat in the body. Okay. And so I don't want women to be steaming on this hot box in a sauna. It's like the same effect as a jacuzzi, and then they're sweating, and then it causes them to have more hot flashes.
Right. I
have heard from 3 women lately that steaming has helped to eliminate their night sweats, which is another thing that menopausal women have. Okay. I can't say conclusive yes or no whether or not it gets rid of night sweats. But it is something that women are reporting back. And then as far as the hot flashes, I just want women who are experiencing hot flashes to steam with caution. The main thing for hot flashes is to get some food therapy and cool the body down before the steaming. And then they would want to do mild steams that are only 10 minutes long.
So cool. I appreciate this so much. I love how educated you are. It started out as just this thing I'm going to do for myself and not tell anyone about. But I love just how much you know, how it's just boom, boom, boom. Okay, this, okay, that, great. I love masters of anything. People who just know their shit make me so excited.
I don't know why I was writing it all down. I don't even know why I was writing down the pre-period, post-period. I didn't think of it as a research project, in the beginning. And then afterwards I realized, I was like, wait, why do I know so much more about, each protocol? And I realized, I was like, oh, because I have this database. And so, I'm planning to publish a research study, of the findings from this database. But in the meantime, go ahead and ask me more questions. Anything you want to know about.
I love it. It's so cool. Quick break in the show to invite you all to some free workshops that we've got going on between now, if you're listening in real time, and August 3rd. So here's what's going on. I have gotten so fired up by the feedback we've received from our Wild Soul Summer School. I wanted to kind of pull it all together. And so the workshop I'm hosting is called Woman Reclaim Yourself. And here's the essence of it. You know, a lot of women are not living in their power. And it's definitely not because we're weak, less than, or inadequate. We simply aren't taught how to handle it, connect to it, or harness it. And what we don't understand, we often fear. So here we are living in a time when we have access to more resources and information than ever, and yet many women are still struggling, playing small, or settling for far less in life than they deserve. Now, no matter who you are or where you're from, your body is brilliant. Your mind is a beautiful thing, your truth is powerful, and your nature is to be free. So it's time to stop dialing down so much of who you really are to fit in, to survive, to please and make other people comfortable. It's time to get smart about how to thrive in this culture, even though it's not always set up for you to do so. So the free online workshop is all about how to cultivate the love, trust, acceptance, and respect for yourself to live in your truth and power, no matter what state the world is in. The link to register is wildsoulmovement.com/reclaim. That's RECLAIM. And we've got 3 different times. There's one happening July 25th, one happening July 31st, one happening on August 3rd. And so whenever you visit that link, you'll get whichever one has not happened yet. And there will be recordings. So regardless, if you're interested, register. We'll get you that recording sometime before August 4th. And here's what I'm going to be covering: how to access your truth through all the shoulds, supposed tos, and expectations that have been placed on you, what it actually takes to honor your whole self, live a meaningful life, and enjoy great relationships without having to struggle or suffer to make it all happen, and then finally some recommendations for how to reclaim and redefine womanhood your way and reconnect with the often overlooked superpowers that all women possess. This workshop is going to be awesome. It's really a culmination of a lot of things that we talk about often, just coming together in one holistic place. You can ask questions. I always leave time for Q&A. It's a 90-minute workshop. So bring a notebook and pen, make sure you have some water, get comfortable, and get ready to hang out, learn some good stuff. I cannot wait to connect with those of you who register. And now back to the show. And so in terms of like your life as this being like a body of work and like your sacred work in the world, what has it been like? Any challenges that you faced of people like being skeptical, or like, I know your friends jokingly called it like the witch chair, but have you run into any like actual like mega resistance or opposition or anything like that?
Yeah, there's opposition, of course. Okay.
So that was super fun and also kind of cool. So for people listening who can't see, Keli has a different background now. Her phone died. We had to wait a couple minutes. We're coming back on. But like, this is what I love about like honoring the feminine is like, this is just real life. This is what happens. Like phones die, we come back, we adjust. This is like the healthy side of being adaptable, right? We just make shit work. And so now we're back. And what we were talking about before I lost you was opposition. What has been some of the challenge that people have been, any kind of crap you take from people or whatever?
Yeah, when did you ever hear anything in the press when Gwyneth Paltrow mentioned vaginal steaming?
No, but my friend Layla Martin, who's been on the podcast, addressed when some doctor came out. It was something around, I guess Gwyneth Paltrow had talked about jade eggs, and then some doctor was like, that's nonsense and whatever. Yeah. So I didn't know she talked about vaginal steaming as well.
She dropped the word about vaginal steaming 2 years ago, and the media went haywire. They went crazy. They dragged poor Gwyneth through the streets. Like, they made every vagina joke you can in the book. They called her a cunt. Like, they really went crazy. And then what the journalists were doing, was they would call up the nearest doctor, okay? And they'd be like, what do you think about vaginal steaming? Gwyneth Paltrow says women should steam their vaginas. And doctors were like, we've never heard of it. Don't do it. But the funny thing was like, when I was like actually going through and looking at these doctors, one of them was a foot doctor. One of them was an eye doctor. For real. So anyways, it was cool because Gwyneth Paltrow exposed a lot of people to the practice. However, What wasn't cool was that doctors, once again, immediately assumed that women are crazy for taking care of themselves or for doing something for their own body. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not cool. It's not cool to be a vaginal steam therapist or to sell vaginal steam supplies.
I think it's
not
very
cool. Well, thank you. But like, nobody's like, none of my parents are like, oh, I'm so proud of my daughter. You know what I mean? Like, if I went back to my university and I'm like, because I sell vaginal steam supplies, like, it's not like reputable.
Right.
You know what I mean? So you're that girl that's talking about vaginas. You know what I mean? Like, there's like always a bad connotation with that. But the interesting thing is, like, I've kind of gone into it. Like, why is it that doctors are completely disregarding the practice when they don't know anything about it? And what I've realized is that some of the only places that vaginal steaming are still practiced are places that are indigenous. It's indigenous midwives that still practice it. It's indigenous midwives that still carry the knowledge of how to do it. And so what happens is, for the most part, Western science and universities disregard indigenous practices.
Right.
They just immediately disregard it. There's two studies that I found. The only studies on vaginal steaming from Western doctors. One is in Turkey and one is in South Africa, and the studies had nothing to do with each other. They were done by international organizations. And the purpose of the study was to survey how many women in the population was doing vaginal steaming. So in South Africa, they discovered that in certain populations, over 90% of the women do vaginal steaming. And in Turkey, they discovered in the rural areas, over 50% of the women do it. So the whole purpose of the study was to survey how many women do the vaginal steaming. That's where the study ended. Only for the purpose of the study telling that when gynecologists work in those areas, make sure to ask women if they do vaginal steaming and tell them not to do it.
Come on.
No research into the actual practice, no research into why women are doing it, whether or not it's working for them. Just guess what? If you're a gynecologist and you're working in these areas, the women might be doing this, and you should ask them about it so you could tell them not to do it. You know, what we have is basically, you know, this idea that, you know, what's white is always right. You know, you can't look into these practices. You know, if indigenous women are doing it, there might be a reason why they're doing it. You know, so it's interesting. So yes, there is opposition. However, as women are having success with it, more and more doctors are gaining interest in it and seeing some of the successes of it. And I will let you know that I have a handful. I keep them on a special list, like they're my VIP. I have doctors that are using my vaginal steam saunas, and they're using them to deal with heavy bleeding, infections, infertility issues, and they're having success. And none of them want to speak about it publicly because they don't want to be ridiculed.
Totally.
But it's only a matter of time. It's only a matter of time before doctors start coming out and being like, okay, no, this is legit. I had really bad cramps. I steamed. I don't have cramps now. There's something to this. I mean, there's no reason why it's not scientific.
Yeah.
It's steam. You know, it's made up of elements. All you have to do is do a study to figure out whether or not it works. Take 100 women, have them steam before their period, see what difference it has with the cramps, you know? So the only reason why it's considered, you know, non-scientific is because there haven't been Western studies on it. However, there are so many case studies of showing success. Honestly, this last week, I got an email from a woman, a poor woman. She said she won't even go to her gynecologist because they just she doesn't feel comfortable there. The last time she went, she was basically left, you know, feeling ashamed of herself. And so she had this, she said softball size, she called it a fibroid, but I actually believe it was a cyst at her vaginal canal opening. She said she noticed it years ago, and then it was like a pea size, it grew to a grape size, and it's been growing and growing. She knows it's there, and she was scared that her doctors were going to surgically remove it. So what she did was she steamed. I've been working with her for, honestly, not very long. I think she got her steam chair around when you got yours, so like maybe weeks, or 4 weeks. She sent me an email. It was filled with caps locks and exclamation points. But what it comes down to is that thing that was on her, first of all, it oozed and it drained out. And then the skin, there was like skin that was hanging left over. Then she was like, what do I still do with this? So she kept on steaming and it fell off. It just came right off. She's been dealing with this issue for 5 years. And now after, I don't know, like a month of steaming, it's gone.
Very cool.
How would a gynecologist deal with that?
Right.
Could it have been cancerous? Could it have been a danger? Would she have had to go under the knife? It's so simple. It's like my advice to women, just try steaming. Fibroids, try steaming. I have customers, and again, they either call me or send me an email with a lot of exclamation points. I have customers whose fibroids have fallen out in the toilet or in the shower, both instances. They have fibroids. Doctors want to do surgery on them. They try vaginal steaming, and the fibroids actually just come right out. It's really incredible stuff. Vaginal steaming is, I'm really excited that it is, especially somebody like you to feature it on your show, and that it is gaining some acceptance. A lot more women are trying it. I ship out 30 steam saunas a month all across the nation. So it's not that women aren't trying it. And as more and more women try it and have successes, it's gaining in popularity because women are like, this worked. Yeah. You should try it. And so as that word of mouth spreads, it's really something that I think will come into mainstream culture, which will be for the benefit of women, not to have to deal with the side effects of birth control, not to have to, recover from surgery, not to have to do, DNC procedures with sharp tools. It really makes a big difference. And then not only that, postpartum. We don't do anything for women postpartum. Doctors don't really do much for, they check you in the hospital. They make sure you're not bleeding to death. They sew you up if you need any sewing. They send you home, and then they check on you 6 weeks later.
Right.
Traditionally, women have always done vaginal steaming postpartum. They steam, multiple times. It changes from culture to culture. In Cambodia, they steam up to 3 months every single day postpartum.
Wow.
And then at other places, they do it only 4 times. But no matter where you go in the world, vaginal steaming is used postpartum. And what it does is it helps to clean the uterus. It helps to tighten the woman back up. It helps the woman to lose weight. It's just so remarkable. Why don't we take care of our women? I think it's mainly because we have lost the knowledge of this tool. And, I was listening to, I know that you were talking to a witch last show. One of the reasons why my theory, it lost prominence in the West was because midwives were considered witches. And so when witchcraft was hunted down and stomped out, that's when the practice was lost. So this wasn't something that women gave up because it was an ancient practice and it was old and it's old-fashioned and it doesn't work. It's something that got suppressed.
I love this so much. I get so fired up about things like this. I'm so happy to have this. I'm so I don't mind sharing that any given month our podcast gets anywhere from 90 to 120,000 downloads. So wow. The idea that 100,000 people could be, and that's just on iTunes. So it goes on YouTube, it goes on Facebook, it goes on all these other players, however people are listening to the show. So this is an invitation. When we talk about reclaiming and redefining womanhood for the 21st century, a lot of it is deciding to reclaim these indigenous practices like you're talking about. And when you're talking about the interview with a witch, she was talking about Lisa Lister, which that was episode 176. So you can, if people want to listen to that episode as well, super complimentary to this, that's at untameyourself.com/episode-176. And this episode is number 179. So untameyourself.com/episode-179. And we're going to put links to all the stuff Keli has mentioned, to her website. This is so amazing because this just gives women some power back. Like I'm always really clear about like, I'm not here to empower anyone. I can't empower anyone, but I can have these conversations. I can introduce them to people like you who are super educated, know their shit, and do this kind of work so they can go, let me try this out for myself. That's empowerment. Going, let me try this. Let me see how this works for me. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, whatever it is. But just knowing that something is an option that previously you didn't even know existed. Like, you should have seen me geeking out at Kimberly's house when I was like, what do you mean? What is all this? Like, so cool. And unintentionally, this month of July, which doesn't surprise me at all because we're currently, our enrollment for my program, Wild Soul Movement, is open right now. So it's very much about like gathering up the sisters all over the world and inviting them home to themselves. So it doesn't, sister, with you and with Keli, like all ended up being with Keli, with Kimberly, all ended up coming out in the same month. So amazing.
That's so awesome.
Yeah. So thank you so, so much for this. We're going to send everyone, like I said, in the show notes. They could check out your website. And I'm moving up to LA soon, so I'd love to meet you in real life. We gotta hang out.
Okay, for sure. I'm actually, I live up in Yosemite now. I moved.
Oh no, I saw your thing said Los Angeles. It's fine. I'm sure I'll meet you in real life at some point.
We'll meet in real life.
Cool.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. Like, I'm so honored.
It's so great. Thank you for like dropping the wisdom. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Mama. We'll see you later. Thank you. Bye, Lotus.
And we even have a cousin. Her name is Alice.
Allison is watching the baby.
Oh, I love that. Thanks, Allison. Thank you for all the hands that helped this to happen today.
Okay.
Bye.
A really easy access point, something that we kind of touched on a number of times. I mean, there's, like Jackie was saying, there's the whole inner rewiring aspect, and that obviously is a more in-depth process, but a really easy access point for flow is learning to use your intuition powerfully and let that be the guiding force in your life. That's one access point. And like we've been talking about in the interview, and you mentioned a couple times, is like following excitement and inspiration, right? Intuition shows up in a lot of different ways, a lot of different signals and cues and ways that it shows up. But the feelings of excitement and inspiration are forward-moving signs of intuition. They're forward-moving. They're pulling you in a certain direction, which is forward.